Hello everyone, it's Bavar from PTC here. We're here with our latest video to give you an overview of, personally, one of my favourite light fighters, the Drake Interplanetary Buccaneer. Throughout this video, we'll be covering the ship's lore, its overall features, specifications, recommended tactics when flying the ship, and how PTC likes to use the old girl, as well as some links to real-world vehicles that we feel fulfill a similar role to the bird in terms of how it was designed to be used and how we ourselves use it. Whilst not as storied as ships like the Venerable Gladius or the storied Vanguard, the Buck does still have her own story to tell. She debuted in 2947 as the first dedicated fighter from Drake Interplanetary, and was built from the get-go to complement or escort the other ships made by Drake. Outside of that initial criteria, she was also designed as a frontier-friendly defense fighter that was able to provide close air support to those folks living on the far-flung edges of the UEE, whilst still being easy to be repaired and be maintained in very poor conditions. After all, the Navy sure as hell can't help everyone, and piracy hasn't been decreasing, that's for damn sure. To quote Dosh Mallory, a famed frontiersman from 2655, "The verse keeps getting bigger, but some things never change. Whatever you got, no matter how much or how little, there's always someone waiting to take it from you. Now you can either let that happen, or you can fight. Don't know about you, but I'm damn well gonna fight." In terms of the ship specifications, she's sitting at a length of 15 meters, a beam of 16, and a height of 4.5. As for her components specifications-wise, she's size 1 across the board for all components, with everything aside from the QT drive and the power plant being doubled up. As far as her weapons are concerned, she is delightfully savage and vicious when she has all her guns on target. She has dual size 1s partnered with dual size 3 hardpoints when they're fixed for the size 3s, and as for her upper mount, she can run with a fixed size 4 or dual gimbaled size 2s. Dual missile racks as a default packing dual size 2s. She, for a light fighter, has the rare ability to carry a mixed loadout where both portions feel beefy and powerful, being equal partners to each other. She has the standard assortment and numbers of countermeasures, and as for her special features as it were, for a light fighter she is packing a hell of a lot of firepower, alternating between 5 hardpoints to 6 depending on whether or not you've got that double size 2 mount up top. She's surprisingly effective against other light and medium fighters and can be quite punishing if she can get the drop on heavy fighters. She's also quite cheap and easy to maintain. As for the Buck's flight profile, whilst not as agile as the other light fighters such as the Gladius or the Arrow, she does have fantastic forwards thrust. This leans her into relying on that thrust axis and its reverse, as well as the attendant acceleration, over your traditional agility during dogfights. Think a drag racer with a shed load of firepower strapped to it. With this dominance of her rear engines in terms of her thrust, she benefits from coupled flight a little bit more than the more agile light fighters, at least in my experience. And she also doesn't quite suffer from the agility penalties in atmosphere as the other light fighters, at least to the same degree. Her decent boost levels are also quite handy when it comes to wrenching the ship's nose around, when coupled with coupled flight and getting those guns on target. I will also personally vouch for the ship's ability to punish jousters, with my loadout's dual size 1 deadbolts and either the 84 or dual size 2 deadbolts as an example, wearing them down until that oh so delightful pop due to the ballistics being able to pin shields. That does touch on what I feel is the Buccaneer's best feature. Her ability as a light fighter to carry such a punishing mixed loadout where both the energy and ballistic weapons are partners instead of one or the other being the token inclusion, and I would strongly emphasize you look at running with a mixed loadout, as her reactor power output is a little bit anemic for my liking to be going all energy boat. This synergy, or almost mandating of the mixed loadout, does allow you to swiftly shred opponents in your weight class, as well as lay a significant amount of hurt onto larger craft that underestimate such a heavily armed light fighter. After all, when most people hear the words light fighter, they think a craft that places a premium on speed and agility, not something that's faster than an MSR, yet almost rivals a Warden for its gun-paced firepower, and is able to take out a Carrack without too much bother. Turning now to general combat strategies. Whilst not as agile as some of the ships you might be up against, that mixed loadout will serve you well in this regard, as you're able to punch through shields as they approach, then boost, roll and pitch to pursue if you're not already prepping to merge, and then follow them with missiles. She's perfect at persistently harassing your targets and never giving them a moment to think, and she absolutely sings when used as a pair or as part of a group. Boost and your forward speed as well as your firepower will be your lifelines in this bird, as well as knowing what fights to pick. The key here is to punish the light fighter jousters if they're daft enough to do it with your ballistic damage slowly building with every pass. Your shield regen should be prioritised as they extend, with the buck fast enough to pounce opportunistically or on the merge. Against heavier foes, you'll want to take the fight to them and try to get outside their cones of fire, as one Inferno pilot learned much to their chagrin on a recent bounty hunting outing. When it comes to atmospheric combat, like the other light fighters, she will suffer from some form of agility restrictions when attempting to turn at high speed in Atmo, so you're best to save your severe maneuvers for SEM and below. That being said, you're still agile enough to be able to outposition heavier fighters, with boost greatly aiding you this and compensating for your weaker maneuvering thrusters. This forward thrust will also allow you to pounce on opportunistic positioning to be able to get a few kicks in. Whilst commonly regarded as being less of a viable option by those in the PvP community I've talked to, I've found pilot skill and practice really can make the old girls sing. And due to this common perception in the meta, you may well find yourself being underestimated in the flying trash can. In terms of her combat speed, she'll be clipping along at 210 meters a second, with her max speed being 1317, her QT amount being pretty much bog standard for most normal fighters. As for her claim times, you'll find standard is 5 minutes 24 seconds, expedited is 1 minute 46, and the cost for this expediting is 2,700. PTC employs the Buccaneer as a swift response interceptor and escort fighter that's able to deal handily with both light and medium threats. She is also a concern to larger targets, especially when you're able to prioritize engines or being employed in larger numbers, thanks to her hard-hitting mixed loadout. As for the ship's real-world equivalent, we've decided to go with something a decent hunk of you may not have heard of: the Mitsubishi F-1 attack aircraft. This bird first flew in 1975 and was retired in 2006, with 77 of them built over the course of their service. She was Japan's first domestically designed and built supersonic combat aircraft, and is a derivative of the T-2 trainer, being focused on anti-shipping and ground attack duties, though still air-to-air combat capable. Thankfully, this transformation from training to fighter or attack aircraft didn't require too much in the way of changes aside from upgrades to the strength of the airframe, some extra hardpoints, and the conversion of the trainer's second seat into an avionics bay. As an interesting aside, she almost didn't come to be, with cost overruns with the T2 almost leading to the F1's cancellation, though luckily the Kawasaki PXL project was cancelled, thereby freeing up the necessary funds. As for her armament, much like the Buck, she can carry a surprising amount of firepower for such a tiny little aircraft. An internally mounted 20mm Vulcan with 750 rounds, and a wide variety of missiles, anti-ship missiles, bombs both dumb and guided, rockets, gun pods, and all of that being spread across 7 external hardpoints. I hope you enjoyed this overview of one of my favourite light fighters in the game, and what little there was admittedly of her lore. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like, a comment, or a subscribe if you're feeling charitable. All that being said, what's your favourite light fighter? Are you a fan of the Gladius, or the Arrow, or perhaps you're one of the kinky few that enjoy the alien light fighters? As a concluding comment, I'll say over the course of doing these ship overviews, it's not often I've found a ship that's had such an enjoyable personality. Where I described the Cutlass Black as a 600-pound pissed-off drunken wild boar, the Buccaneer has cemented its place in my heart as the fighter equivalent of a Chihuahua. But to be specific, one that's eaten its body weight in cocaine, rolled around in some Semtex, and is now trying to kill anything that breathes. It may not always succeed, but by God it'll try, and it'll have your back every ill-conceived step of the way. This is Bavar from PTC, signing off.